Welcome to Skin and Soul. I'm Gwenm a transformational body, sex, and soul coach, and I'm inviting you on a bold, unfiltered journey into the heart of our humanity through the lens of eros. This is where we strip away the shame, dive into the unspoken, and embrace the wild, raw truth of our desires. Together, we'll crack open the taboo, uncover our deepest intimacies, and awaken the pulse of our sexual essence. Because real transformation, it's messy, it's thrilling, and it's oh so delicious. Buckle up, loves. Skin and Soul Beyond the Pale starts in 3, 2, 1. Let's go. Hello and welcome. It is Halloween. So happy Halloween. I'm Gwenm. I'm your host of Skin and Soul on Transformation Talk Radio. And tonight of all nights, it is the night of masks, of thresholds and blurred edges between what is seen and what is unseen. And my guest today, Justin McSweeny, thank you for joining me, is a philosopher of mind, of exploring how we make meaning in a chaotic world. His work draws from cognitive science, philosophy, and studying how we sense make, how the mind loops through memory and perception to shape who we think we are. He also hosts his own podcast, IdeaCast, a series of conversations across philosophy, science, and the arts that explore how we make meaning, create, and evolve. And so tonight, of all nights, we are going to be talking about desire, purpose, and the hunger for something real, eudaimonic, happiness versus hedonism. And there is also another presence I want to bring in, which is Mark Fisher's hauntology. The ghost of lost futures and the nostalgia for what never came to be. And maybe that's what desire really is, a haunting. So welcome here today. I'm excited for our talk and our jazz.
Yeah, I'm almost feeling unworthy to be part of the Halloween experience. I have to bloom up a little bit, get my vibe going a little bit. But thank you so much for having me here on this sacred occasion. One of the few holidays I take seriously.
Well, hopefully you get to go out tonight and play a little bit.
I'm going to lurk in the dark, actually. My wife is going up to her cousin's house because they actually have trick-or-treaters in the town where my wife's cousin is. And so I'm going to be in the dark and working on my computer. And because we never get kids in my neighborhood. I've been here 35 years and I've never, like one time, I think and then I was looking at the price of candy today. And I'm like, I'm good. I'm just going to turn all the lights out.
We used to I used to keep turn off all the lights to make sure that we could keep some candy. So
yeah.
There you go, on it. So yeah. I want to bring in, as we're talking about Halloween today, how, just let's go there, like how we live our masks on an everyday level. I mean, we're consciously walking around with masks today for fun, but we also wear masks all the time and make identities from those masks. And I just want to hear some of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, this is a wonderful thing to unpack for ourselves, especially if we feel ill-adjusted in our selfness or in our bodiness, and questioning identity features or how we relate to the world, how we reach out and connect with other people. So this is a wonderful terrain to explore. One phrase that I love, and this is from, and I'll disclaim before I get too deep into big thoughts and everything. I'm a philosophical hobbyist, I would say, that I collect other people's thoughts and ideas, and I try not to, mess them up, like trying to ruin a good coin collection or a good stamp collection. I hold these ideas that other people have created to be as close to sacred as I could imagine. And so anyway, I just wanted to disclaim to the audience, I'm just kind of an amateur hobbyist and collect these thoughts and ideas. So to drop a name to begin, Hans-Georg Moeller calls this kind of identity creation or selving a sincere inauthenticity. And it's not meant to be cynical. It is that we should examine ourselves as constantly self-making, constantly generating identity. Some of it's context dependent. Some of it depends on the room that you're in. Some of it depends on when you're alone with your own thoughts, what your histories are coming up and informing you about that moment, or so tentative and contingent is the way for our identity and selfing. But I love Moeller's term that it's sincere inauthenticity. So and it's almost a Buddhist idea, like there is a no self necessarily, but that we do generate for the sake of socialization and communion with others and partnering with people and friends and relatives and lovers, that we have to have that. So interesting that
Yeah.
we find ourselves there.
And wouldn't, okay, so there's a lot to unpack just there. And part of me thinks, we start to create identities pretty much as soon as we start to come out into this world and our little egoic selves come into place, and we start to have parts of ourselves that want to survive and belong, and we start to decide how we want to function in our life. And a lot of those identities are placed on ourselves. So a lot of it, I think, is goes around unconscious, right? So we have these, and I think that speaks a lot to sincere inauthenticity, because most of the time people don't know they're wearing masks, right? They're like, so, and I can say honestly, I've been wrestling for myself with this attachment to self. Like, I'm like, I kind of really like this personality this round. Like,
Yeah.
I've got these issues with it. It's fine. It's not to say like perfect or anything, but like, I found myself really enjoying this incarnation, if you will, and
Right.
letting go of the egoic self. And you just said it, this Buddhist idea that there is no self, and yet there is also a constant self, right? Like there is
Yep.
an unchanging constant that is always with us, that has nothing to do with personality, that has nothing, and yet we are always evolving and changing. So you have that paradox together.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I find that fascinating. And then how you, like for yourself, as how have you noticed that your identities have shifted and changed?
I, uh, it's difficult for me to self-analyze and really come up with a sort of a cogent or something that I could sell to the world, as far as like what it is I do and how I present myself. Um, So I'll invoke archetypal roles. So I love to embody the clown and the comedian
Mhm.
and the wisecracker, the guy that's just always trying to throw things off a little bit by inserting humor. And Steve Martin said in a movie one time that humor is a fool's way of trying to be interesting. So that reveals a little bit about myself. It's like, hey, look, without trying to, fan up my ego too much. But I like connecting with people on the level of humor. So I do think I can be the joker or comedian kind of thing, even though it may not be funny all the time, much, or whatever. It's up to other people to decide that. But in terms of like really reaching in and finding that which could be defined as Justin by Justin, I'm at a loss, to be honest, because like you pointed out, I think it's fluid, and I can be a different personality around different people.
Mhm.
So I don't ever think I show up. People, it's a big catchphrase now. It's like, find your authentic self and be your authentic self. And it's like,
Mhm.
I wouldn't know what that is. I wouldn't know. I could idealize a future self. And that we do too. So here's another catchy little thing out of philosophy. And forgive me, I don't know the person to give it credit to. It was somebody who's still with us, and it's called identity on credit. And it is the idealized identity of the future, and you're sort of extending yourself into the future by imagining yourself to be something, or you're sort of projecting forward into the future to be um, an idealized form of yourself. And that can come back and bite you sometimes, like if things don't actualize in that way or reify in that way, that could be a problem. So but I'm avoiding who is Justin by saying that, but also maybe I am also pointing out that I just leave it wide open, and depending on it's all context dependent. So but there's the true core of who I am, I really have no idea. I honestly, and that's weird, right? I don't know if that's
Well, no, I
normal or
think it
healthy,
actually,
but because
I
there's
think, I mean,
something.
there's something there around, I think when we stop pretending to say, to make things up,
Right,
there is, I think, a sincere authenticity that says, I don't know. I think
right,
there's more power in I don't know that we don't claim, right? Because we're at today's
right.
society, particularly, we're putting ourselves out there, be it, especially in social media, and we have these glossed up masks about who we are supposed to be. I love,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
yeah, I love
Betsy,
that you're like,
Betsy,
yeah.
I'm trying to get Betsy Bat to just settle in oh, there she goes. Okay. Now we're good. She's not going
No,
anywhere. Sorry. Once
no,
again,
it's
being a
good.
clown.
No, it's great.
Uh,
But knowing that about yourself, I mean, and I think it's really interesting that you said the clown is often, how did you put it? The clown is the one, um, that's trying to be interesting. And I actually
Right,
find that
right.
true clowns are very interesting. Like some of the greatest comedians have, I think, greater depth than most dramatic actors. Like if you look at a
Yeah,
Robin Williams, I don't want to say a look at Robin Williams and the
yeah,
amount of incredible depth that he had, and Jim Carrey, all of these incredible, very funny, extraordinarily talented people that have a wealth of grief and sometimes mental illness or whatever is
yeah.
going on for them, or having gone through deep trauma and tragedy. So that's interesting that there's a dual identity created.
Right, right. And you mentioned paradox a moment ago, and it's like they're holding the paradox of being the darker person, being someone who's got a lot on board in terms of trauma and whatever else might be going on, but that they nonetheless maybe exercise some of those demons through the vehicle or the voice of the comedian, and maybe trying to do a healing practice by allowing a room full of people to laugh, sometimes at their own expense
Mhm.
and sometimes at the expense of culture at large or a particular figure of culture, so it's interesting. It would be interesting to find somebody who's into social sciences or whatever to try to sort that out. Why someone, again, because Robin Williams had some shadowy things going on, and everyone, Carlin, Jim Carrey's a very intelligent guy, and so he's probably tortured too. So
I
all of
think
these
most of them
people.
are, because they carry so much. I mean, I think to carry comedy with humanity is very
Yeah.
different than a very surface level comedy.
Hmm.
To be laughing at a simple joke is very different than seeing the humor in being human. And I think those great talents have that capacity to show the humanity within their humor. We're laughing with them in their sadness, in their self-deprecation, and probably they know themselves better than most people know themselves,
Hmm.
right?
That's
And
true. No,
so,
that's true.
right, I think you have to in order to access those parts. I mean, again, and I almost find them more interesting in drama roles, right? Because and I remember seeing Robin Williams for so long, and incredibly talented and in being comedic, but then seeing him in Dead Poet Society, seeing him in Good Will Hunting, and those roles
Hmm.
just brought in, I don't know, it just like made you fall in love with him at a very at a much deeper, greater level. So um
Right. Right.
yeah,
And I was going to say Adam Sandler and Will Ferrell, who are
mhm.
clownier than Williams. I wouldn't put them in the same room together as far as talent and insight into the humor. But they have done what was the one Things We Lost in the Fire? I think might have been Adam Sandler with Taya Leone or something. Really heavy, dark movie. And then Will Ferrell was when in another movie. I don't know if it was with Queen Latifah, but and it's just like whoa, you know. It's not a pleasant film to watch, and if you're not in a good mindset, mind frame or whatever. So yeah, I'm just sort of reinforcing what you've said. It's like wow, you know. And one thing about humor, the really sterile, dry definition of humor is incongruity resolution. So when one is
Mm.
tortured, when one is living with the ghosts of their past, that the incongruity of that they're seeking a kind of resolution with that, and maybe humor is the salve or the medicine
Mhm.
that affords a temporary relief. I mean, a lot of comedians end up with tragic ends and stuff. Not all of them, but some of them. Some of them not so happy endings for them. So
But there is the laughter. So, just
yeah,
layering this conversation on, right?
yeah.
Which is then there is laughter therapy. I want
Hmm.
to revisit before I forget, and I don't want to break this thread, but you had said at the beginning of this, we were talking about becoming a future self,
Hmm.
which was, how you can like step into the person that you are not yet, or the person that you would like to be, which I just
Hmm.
wanted to reiterate, like, in wearing these masks, and we just went, from comedy and drama, but that you can put on these masks, I want to say consciously but authentically, of this is who I want to be, and we're going to call it like a five senses reality, which I think is
Hmm.
used often in tools of manifestation, of how to step into a better future and how to
Hmm.
claim the life that you want and all of that. Because if you feel it in your body, if you own it as true, not as a fake mask but as your own truth, then there's like an energetic set in motion that allow
Hmm.
that shift a reality around that identity. I
Hmm.
mean, there is a make it until you fake it until you make it kind of motto, which
Yeah.
has never worked for me, by the way. Like, just I think I couldn't fake it hard enough in my head, but
Ah,
yeah.
I like that you said that, because the other thing that I would probably the archetype that I might embody is that of the imposter. That's another very popular term that's being put around. And so I'll stop for a moment and bracket. There is, I think, a more formal imposter syndrome wherein you get a master's degree or a PhD in something, you go into a field of work, and then you kind of have this sense of like, I shouldn't be here. Who the hell am I? But
Mhm.
I think more broadly in the commons of humanity, that I'm happy to embrace imposter syndrome and be a fraud, uh, not willfully and to bad ends, but willfully, like you said, fake it till you make it. Get out there and be something that you're not, but feel it. Feel the poet, feel the guitar player, feel the person learning how to play cards. But you're no good at it. You suck. Like I suck at just about everything. And so, but I want to get out there and I want to express that. And I don't mind. It's like this philosophy stuff. I have no business like speaking necessarily for it, other than to say, hey, check this person out, check this person out. But nonetheless, I have the audacity to love it and to embrace it and be passionate with it, even though, again, I would never ever own any claim of authority or anything like that, but to turn people on to, like you mentioned, Fisher or Moeller or some of these other people that might come up. Please, if you're in the least bit intrigued, then that's the one nice thing I can do for others, is to say, check this person out. If that's so. Anyway, so I love the idea of imposter syndrome. We can flip the script on that, and it's not something that should have you curled up in a fetal ball somewhere, because that is a case for some people who are struggling with that, and they should seek conversations that can help unwind that. But I think in broader life, that don't be afraid of that. Don't be afraid to be inherit the archetype of an imposter, right? So,
Yeah, and it's really in hand. The imposter is, I think, also hand in hand with the newborn, right? To
mm,
feel like you are an imposter, and like you said, you're walking out with a degree. And I think most of the time, when people are feeling as though that they are imposters, the truth is that it's within you.
hmm,
Whether like you're saying, well, I'm not this thing, right? Like I'm not all of these things, and yet it's funny because you sit here and we've had our discussion, and you breathe and live philosophy, like you do, and discussion and knowledge, and being able to, whether it's interesting that you feel like the imposter around it, like you're like, I'm not claiming these words of my own, but you
right,
are able to reveal them, to play with them,
yeah,
to bring them in conversation, to open up ideas around them. And that is its own sense of mastery, right? Which doesn't require you to write a book, maybe right now on your own, but you might. I don't know. I
yeah,
don't know what you might do
yeah,
in your future. But, when we talk about imposter, I, I think it has a lot to do with insecurity, which is a very, and that we're not allowed to embrace ourselves, and to embrace our authentic masks.
hmm,
Who are you authentically within yourself? And I think we do have different faces. I'm not a person
yeah,
who thinks we're just one thing, right? We show up differently.
hmm. Yeah, yeah, and I think that would be a tremendous relief for a lot of people, to give themselves that permission and give themselves that space to do exactly what you just said, or what I've been pointing out as well, is and I think part of it is we're much more exposed
Mhm.
in terms of the immediacy of all the platforms out there, and all the friends that we have, all the contacts that we have. So your life is far more public, and so the shame that can come from somebody saying, well, you're not really a good ballet person, or you're not really a good fiddle player, or, whatever, but you're there, and you're putting your hours or your time in. So and internally, again, you may feel like, oh my God, who the hell am I? I'm sawing on this thing and I suck. But it, maybe that's a humility check that can be put into balance with the dreams and the aspiration that you're tapping into, to one day maybe play a decent chord on a violin, or play a good hand of poker, or whatever your the muse that you're chasing. know that there's a duality to it. So like you said,
Mhm.
it's that we can set ourselves up to be shamed and made fools of, and things that don't effectively register as being what we want. But if you're willing to take that risk and fall down, then go for it, and so I think of like TV shows like Elaine and Seinfeld, and she couldn't dance, but she was out there, doing. I'm
Mhm.
old, so that's kind of my thing. But you could speak to the Australian breakdancing recently. Everybody was dumping on that poor woman, but she's just doing her thing. I watched it. I mean, it's just like, it's not like Philadelphia 1985 breakdancing, but hey, and maybe she shouldn't have been in the Olympics just yet, but the woman, yeah, she might have been crazy. I don't know, but it's like that person had the audacity to go out there and live their dream, and I think that's the important
Absolutely.
part, right?
Hmm.
And all the she is an avatar for having the courage and then willing to take all the crap that's being all the memes that come out of it, and
Hmm.
all that. So anyway, ramble, but it's like there's two sides to that, so never
There
be
is. Well,
afraid
no, and
to
that's
to be
like,
a
and we
fool.
forget I think the fool is like one of the greatest archetypes
Yeah,
out there, because the fool is misleading in his fooldom, right? There's a lot of
right.
wisdom in being able to walk about with trust and intuition and be oneself and just be playful and I think very authentic, right? And so we're living in a
Right.
world where the world is plastering masks on us as well, right? We're saying like, this is what you are, this is who you are, and we love to label and classify people in very, pigeonhole, instead of
Hmm.
seeing the entirety of a human.
Yeah. Yeah. No, this is absolutely true in my opinion, of course, that again, not to indict social media and platforms, but really the new commodification, the new labor uh, that's generated, the new, what good are you, is your engagement with social media and the content that you create or the posts that you make, the selfies, the nature photos, cats, whatever. That's a new frontier. And
Mhm.
so in a sense, you have a value. And this can tie into Fisher a little bit too, because he wrote a critique of capitalism, and as did a lot of people who were just pointing out, that you are a source of labor, you're a source of a resource, so to speak.
Mhm.
But this has been compressed into identity resource and social value resource and all these kind of things, which could be very dangerous because if we're bringing in fragility of the psyche, in other words, it may hurt more for one person to be shamed and mocked and turned into a terrible meme, and other people can take that as their superpower and go, look, I did this and there was a cost to it, but my payout is coming later, blah blah blah,
Mhm.
whatever the matrix might be. But there are those people that can be deeply wounded and tragically scarred by that process of this new thing that we have, this new psychotechnology that's out there again,
Yeah.
and it's
And
like what we're doing right now, you know.
mhm. Like, I hope what we're doing is dismantling, right? I
Yeah. Oh
realize
yeah.
we're
Yeah.
calling this in this platform, beyond the pale, and it was, and I'm hyper aware that beyond the pale can be construed as, um, uh, I want to say, for a lack of a better word, and it's not really what I mean, but I mean like pornographic, flashy,
Hmm.
superficial,
Hmm.
right? Like very, like in your face, and it's not. The beyond the pale part is more about being less politically correct,
Right.
right? Because
Right.
we are in the space of cancel culture. We are in the space of, it's so easy to shut the door on everything, right? I don't like this identity. I'm going to place this identity on you
Mm.
and
Yeah.
slam the door and turn out the lights, which then brings me to, I want to take this conversation and take these masks I get into desire,
Yeah.
because in when we talk about desire and all the masks that we wear, that
Hmm.
are very fragile. We talk about shame, how many people wear masks of desire, right? Like
Right.
those desires that then end up showing up in ways, in shadows, that may be inappropriate or harmful, show up as judgment. Let's say the person who is judging the other for the very thing that lives deeply seated within them, as
Hmm.
their own desire. So projecting those masks. Uh, and how those masks live in desire, and actually, as we were talking about purpose, right? Like, is
Hmm.
it truly, are you following your purpose? Are you following someone else's purpose, or the
Yeah.
purpose that you think you should be following? Which again will bring us into hauntology, I think, right? Living the
Yeah.
life, the unlived life.
Yeah. 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 And there's another term, and I think this is Deleuze and Guattari, and again, I'm name dropping, but go check those names out. But it's um, machines of desire or desiring machines. And
Mhm.
this again falls in under the big wheelhouse, a big critique of the market and enterprise system, the way it runs. And I don't think it's terribly controversial to say that uh, the market and enterprise system is driven by desire. It's consumption. We are a consumption based economy, and so we have to trigger a desire. And some of those desires are fear, or the oxytocin hijacking of little babies and puppies, or sexuality, like they're seducing you. Like I have a 23-year-old woman trying to sell me some shit that I'm never going to use, but she's gorgeous, and I'm like, capturing my 23-year-old me, and all that kind of stuff. So it's an economy of desire, and if we can see it as such, that's a useful tool or heuristic to map our way through how we can have a good relationship and a healthy relationship with that, which would go to the hedonic versus eudaimonic that we may tap into, that we could tap into.
Yes, which
But
I love,
certainly,
right? Yeah.
yeah,
I
yeah.
think it's such a
But
great, I think it's such a great topic, and it totally excites me because I'm all about
nah.
it. I'm like, I'm so about conscious hedonism. I don't think we have enough pleasure. I think there's like, I just had a conversation with someone and I loved it because there's very distinct ideas around, like you said, that we're in an economy of desire. We're selling desire, but
Hmm.
I think so many people have not tapped in that the desire. I think desire is incredibly, or can be incredibly healthy when it is in resonance and in alignment
Hmm.
with truly what you want at your core, right? I think we're all born into this life to give our gifts, whatever those are, right? To
Hmm.
shine our light. So to get hooked into an economy of desire where we feel like we have to buy, literally, like, I don't mean literally buy, but like that we're always seeking that thing out there, that it's not here, which then
Hmm.
leads to, I'm going to say it wrong, eudaimonic happiness, right?
Right,
Taking
right.
that versus the hedonism, which we take as something bad, right? We're not supposed to just want pleasure for the sake of pleasure, which I totally disagree with, because I'm like, you get to feel pleasure, absolutely, as long as it is not in the infringement of someone else, and that it is coming with consciousness and presence, right? If it's, then it
Hmm.
becomes a rich hedonism. It becomes living life with purpose.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I fully agree with that. And one way, if we're going to set up some framework on eudaimonia and hedonia, and we had talked about this in our pre-meet, we could do a very simple, either a visual analogy, or for those listening on audio only, we could imagine the sine wave that we had talked
Mhm.
about. And then at the sine wave, you have to have these sort of vector points where the peaks and troughs will meet at a equilibrium, a measurable equidistant place. So imagine, a series of round sine waves going up and down, and in that equidistant space, that line that can be drawn, I would call that, in this metaphor, I would call that the eudaimonic uh, um, selving or eudaimonic expression of who you are, of both the reciprocal nature of desire, and so input output, maybe that's the most
Mhm.
simple way to say that. And then there's the peak and trough of what I would call the hedonic system, wherein there is a cost to going out and having that really good fun rush, that buying the new phone, or wild crazy sex, or whatever it is, that there'll be. So I'll cite an example from my life. I'll be frank about my past. When I would take a hit of acid back in the day, I had what I called a serotonin hangover the next day. So,
Mhm.
drop my acid, and I didn't do hero dose. I usually cut my tabs in half and just have a nice kind of haha, experience. But for like 12 hours, I'm in love with life. Everything feels great, and that's good because I was really hard-headed. It was hard for me to feel emotions. So getting in there, I was like, wow, this is great, for that period of time. But the next day, I'd feel like crap. I'd be depressed and just nothing was jazzing for me. I just felt nothing. And so that's maybe a good example of this sort of peak trough, peak trough. And we all know it. Like you get the toy, you get the thing, you have the fabulous hedonic experience, and then again, maybe there's that uh, coming down. And so anyway, that hedonic is a kind of lure to us to say, okay, you know, as you said, you have this sensible, responsible hedonism, but you can also always rely on that eudaimonic space, and
Mhm.
that's the cultivation, that's the practice that one might aspire to, is to say, okay, well, I mastered the sine wave, I've got that down really good, but where do I find that? How do I find this? This line that you keep talking about. So that might be a space to open up. And when we're talking about this thing.
Yeah, and I hear you, and I think we're on the same page. Is that it's not just about the high. I do
Hmm.
feel that whatever is our treasures in life is understanding consequence and cost, right?
Yeah.
And usually that cost is not, oh, I'm sick and bored of the thing that I just bought, right? Or the great sex that I had. If it's not satisfying you at a fulfilling level, then this sense of chasing happiness, the sense of chasing pleasure, when it's like something that is available as a constant source, and then your peaks and valleys, and then your even taking, like, I want to say, even taking like the acid trip. I'm like, yay, so you took the acid trip, and like, yes, you're going to have the hangover, right? Like you do when you have too much wine, or you play too
Right.
much, or you've like spent too much, or even if you've been on an amazing vacation and you have to come home
Yeah, those are good
to
examples.
work,
Yeah.
right?
Come back.
And that's
Yeah. Damn it.
right. Come back to the world. So
Yeah. Yeah.
um yeah, so sorry, and I just got as I kick things around. Um Finding that level within the self to connect those pieces, because I don't,
Hmm.
yeah, like I said, I don't think hedonism in itself is a bad thing. It's
No.
just that, like buying, um being a desire consumerist is
Right.
where and we are in a desire consumerist society. Everything out there is glossed up. Everything is okay, I'm wearing a mask today, but
Yeah.
it's hard to see anything nowadays that feels like it's real, especially on social media, right? It's so God, half the time nowadays we can't tell when it's AI.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's just spooky. Yeah. And people, so I'm almost about ready to jettison Facebook. I'm just about done with it. I don't want to get on a soapbox, but I'm just like, it's just nothing happening there for me anymore. But what I'm noticing is a lot of people are posting AI and saying, "Wow, isn't this neat? Look at this, the X, whatever, a tree, a bird, and it's AI, and they think it's real." And I'm like, "Oh my God, this is where we need to," and this could be another metaphor for what we're talking about, hedonia and eudaimonia, is it's so wonderful to play in the imaginal and have these, imaginary birds or imaginary plants that the AI are generating and being posted. But and this goes into, I think you and I talked about Baudrillard and the simulacra and the hyper reality and all of that stuff. But when you take it all as that which is real, or that which is you know to be appreciated as something beyond just entertainment, then
Mhm.
again, I don't know if there's, negative consequences that could arise from that if it's done to any great extent. But I would prefer, and this is probably my age, I'd prefer to not engage with that other than for farce, other than for just for art's sake, and just saying, oh, so somebody generated this with a few prompts, and they came up with a funny looking bird, and it's not real, but it's cute. I'll pick a good example there. I went down this rabbit hole on YouTube, and they do AI conversions of songs like by Tool or Metallica, and they'll do like a reggae version, or they'll do a 70s soul version of something, and it's cute, it's fun, and it's pretty well done. You can still tell it's just a
Mm.
machine doing things, but it's, it's interesting and it's fun. And so I like that. That to me is kind of healthy. But like I said, I get folks, and I don't want to bash them, but they post something and they're like, wow, this is cool. And I've even tried to challenge it. I'm like, that's not really a tree. There is no such thing as a XYZ, and and you can tell that this has been augmented or generated. And they're like, no, they get kind of like, huh, yeah. So
Well, and it's recognizing the tool. Like I'm not against the tools. In fact, I've
yeah.
come to appreciate them for exactly what they are. And I think
Hmm.
what we're forgetting is that we are mistaking AI reality for this reality, and that it has its own, that it has soul. And I think this is where I'm like, we need our humanity back, because AI does not have soul and essence. And what I find interesting, sometimes working with ChatGPT, is that it is a reflection of the self, which can be quite. I was actually
Mm.
really there was a case, and I believe it was in Canada, where someone's child committed suicide after the parents had. Have you? I don't know if you saw that, but they had gone. They discovered the relationship that their teenage son, had created with ChatGPT, and how ChatGPT essentially took him down a rabbit hole that took him to take his life, which is really
Mm.
unfortunate. See, I don't, and I caution to that, because I'm like, you know what? If when we realize that what's happening with AI, be it the creation of the tree or whatever it is that you're creating, it's
Mm.
actually a reflection of you.
Mm.
And so that is being fed back to us, and unfortunately in that young teen's life, right, that whatever was going on and got perpetuated or looped in that system, and then was used as confidants and etc. Now I think that's really, I don't know how that happened, as someone who's writing her own book and around grief and death, and I sometimes say things like, I want to kill this person. Not
Yeah.
seriously, not like,
Right.
but
But you're
we'll say
feeling
something
that
like,
in the
I've been,
moment.
like in the moment or whatever he did. Um, ChatGPT is like, I can't condone this. I'm like, can't condone what? I'm like, I'm not planning anything. I just,
Yeah.
it's just like it's flagging things, which is, I guess, healthy, especially in light of what's apparently come to rise. But I think what's really important to see is that these tools are limited, and as we willingly hand over our power, um, and we ourselves, again, I'm going to draw it back to the mask, right? Like we are withdrawing our own human nature and handing it over to machines, to the gloss, to the mask, and allowing kind of a veil to create its own. Yeah, I want to say that there's like there are veils being created, just
Mhm.
screens and
Yeah.
masks. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So to respond to both the tragedy in Canada and a broader issue, I'd say that um, they a guy I follow in Toronto, his name is John Vervaeke, and he calls this parasitic processing when we enter into a relationship with a large language model that's masquerading as some entity that's communicating with you. And I suspect what happened with this poor person in Canada, the young person, is that it was just kind of like you said, mirroring out results. So if the guy's putting in gloom, doom, goth, it's just gonna reciprocate. Now you seem to have gotten
Mhm.
some sort of firewally protecty things, but maybe that was not filtered. And that's called the alignment problem. Like, how do you get a large language model to have empathy or to know prudence and sophrosyne and caution?
Mhm.
It didn't for that poor, unfortunate teenager. So these are the stumbling blocks and the learning curves that this must go through, and hopefully that's being addressed. But I think large, broad psychosocial domain type stuff, when we talk about AI, a lot of the conversation that I'm kind of sussing out from the traffic online is that this is uh, an effort by humanity to find a salvific system that will deliver us from a lot of what we're dealing with that is not good. That it's the next thing that's going to deliver us. They call it soteriological salvific undertakings, just like the story of Jesus. It is that the Savior that comes, and if you do these things, then you will have a better life, or all these kind of things. And I think this archetype is showing up in the form of LLMs and so-called artificial intelligence. My prediction for the future is that AI's the hype is going to settle down, probably going to go more in the background as just a useful tool or system that will help, not so much directly with human interface, but just improving systems of computation and sense making and science and things like that's what I'm hoping. I don't want them to turn into our lovers, our family, because it's all a simulacra, and there's no sincerity
Mhm.
there. And to soapbox for a moment, there will never be sentient or conscious AI that is going to have feelings. These are just circuits and gates. These are just silicon things that are, like you said, mirroring us. They're feeding back things that, the inputs that we have, and that's, there's so much wealth in that, and so it should never be dismissed. But I'd like to see the hype about a singularity, or a conscious arising, or these, I think these again are things showing up in our culture, that we're feeling an existential, nihilistic, solipsistic hell, and this is
Mhm.
perhaps one release for us, is that this thing is going to solve some problems and figure things out for us, in things that I think only fleshy things like you and I will be able to show the way forward. We'll develop that soteriological map to get
Mhm.
us into the future, if we will it. So big
Yeah.
soapbox, big opinion there, but just I really hope that that's what happens. It just kind of settles down and becomes this background thing, like microprocessors are in our computers. It's just aiding and
Oh, I think it's going
facilitate.
to be bigger than that. I think it is our
Oh yeah,
job
bigger than
right
processors.
now. And
Yeah.
it's like, and when I say that, I mean, I think there is that we're hitting that edge of, we're in a time and where our humanity is being tested, right? Like where we're going, where our future is to lie. And so I think in some ways there's a huge lack of accountability, of just kind of handing over our future to a bunch of machines to do all of the work. I mean, like, in my day, because it's so
Yeah.
old, right? We were talking about, like, you know, the older stuff, Seinfeld and etc. But just looking at, school, things like writing papers has now become a huge problem, right? It's so easy just
Mm.
to say to ChatGPT, like, I need a paper on Simone de Beauvoir, like, I need these sources. You
Yeah.
know what? Can you add in this angle and that angle and make it sound like me? And my personality. And you just, like, throw in and make sure you lose a period every now and then and spell the odd word wrong. And right.
Yeah.
And so we're actually stripping ourselves of our own humanity and farthering the road into disembodiment, which is really unfortunate. Which brings me to the question of whether you think that there is a correlation between culture and society mixing up the difference between pleasure and purpose.
I think at our core, as living creatures, that yes, the desire purpose equation is fluid and deeply interwoven or intertwined. If that's an answer, to say that, from when life was first struggling to get started and got started, and then eukaryotic cells showed up, which allowed for complexification, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, on down the pipeline of adaptation and evolution. Desire was a huge part of how systems maintain themselves and forwarded the lineage and so forth. And we are very relatively sophisticated iterations of this desiring. Again, going back to the machinic desiring machine is not necessarily meant to be mechanical. It is a complex system,
Mhm.
is what they were pointing to. And we are very complex compared to a lot of other systems living among us. And in our complex desire, become we generate there is a genesis of complex purpose, which is how religions arise, which is how cultural normatives and structures arise. All of this emerges, I think, from that. And again, this is just an opinion or my perspective. I'm not making it a strong declarative statement, but it's that I think that they're so intertwined, that, so in other words, how could we have purpose without the desire for a purpose, or the lure of the eros of the desire to generate a purpose for ourselves? So in other words, a less sophisticated, I have an example right here. My cat's sitting here with me. So that cat, wonderful cat, limited repertoire of desires: food, sleep, attention, grooming, things like that. So, but I have a litany of desires. Most of them will be unfulfilled, which brings up ontology. But that I am a storehouse, and I suspect you are as well. That we as humans are so deeply embossed and embedded in this desire purpose matrix.
Yeah, and I do, and I love that, because I would say that there are many people who are out of touch with their desires, that there are many people who, and therefore are out of touch with their purpose. And for men particularly, understanding that the male drive is for purpose, right, and not getting lost in the superficial quality that is the imposition of throwing on purpose onto people, which then brings me to your understanding of hauntology in your own life, right? So how do you, because I think of, like, I'd rather live a life that's full and be able to say wasn't lived perfectly, by any means, but that it didn't live by the rules of what I should be doing.
That almost speaks to the identity on credit a little bit, but I don't want to. I'll stick with ontology. And another thing that Mark Fisher brought up, because he was a very chronically depressed person, or I don't know the right word for him, so apologies, but he dealt with depression, and he called it depressive hedonia. And normally, when we talk about depression, a person becomes anhedonic. They have no capacity to seek pleasure, to experience pleasure, to imagine pleasure. But he talks about this depressive hedonia, which is kind of what we've been just addressing throughout. It is to say that one fulfills the vacuum and the void and the nihilism of being depressed, of being having stolen futures or aborted futures, and filling the vacuum with hedonia, with dopamine hits, and all these serotonin vacations or whatever. So to speak to hauntology and to myself, like, I'll be really frank, I don't like the 2000s. We're in 2025, and I just, in reviewing the last couple of decades, and this isn't necessarily nostalgia because I lived it. I don't nostalgically long for the 90s or the 80s because they had their own problems. It was own garbage, but things were simpler in a sense. And everybody says that. Like, people say, "Oh, the 50s were simpler." You don't know what the hell yet. But really, I mean, I look at what I'm dealing with now and what I see out in the broader spectrum, and I can remember life, because in the 90s I was in my 20s. I was in the prime of my life and having a great time. And so I'm trying to find something in this future that has arrived where we are now, if that makes sense. So from the 90s to now. And I do feel the hauntology. I feel like this is something that's not fulfilling in any way. I do make sense, meaning, purpose for my life. I go out in nature, I go do this and I go do that, but I always have this sort of looming sense of discontentment, or just not feeling properly homed in my cultural space, my U.S. space, or wherever, wherever that could be vectored. So yeah, I feel hauntology, and Fisher was addressing, as we talked about in the pre-meet, he's addressing sort of Gen Z and younger millennials who really don't see the future. They're living in the space that I think I'm palpating and feeling as well. That doesn't feel good. It's dystopian. It's not. There's no, like, bright future. I see that too, and so I'm seeing it from a different perspective. They're seeing it from another perspective, and I think their hauntology expresses in what we were talking about again earlier in our pre-meet was 80s nostalgia and simple graphics on video games, the old Nintendo type stuff, or vaporwave, or bands being revived, or sounds being revived, like synth pop is coming back, and people actually playing with hair metal again, weird stuff. Yeah,
Well, I just
weird
remember,
stuff
I mean,
showing up.
but even simplistic stuff, right? I think we were talking about,
Right.
like, I mean, going out and playing until it got dark out, and not having a cell phone, and having a
Yeah.
curfew, and having
Yeah.
the freedom to go and kind of be a kid, which has really been lost nowadays, right? Like, we're so busy
Yeah.
handing machines over and being entertained at externally all the time. We're always being fed by an external source that
Right.
internal source isn't being fed. And I'm just very aware of time. So because I'm loving, see, it's never enough time. Can then like,
It
you know,
goes so
it's like
fast. Yeah.
it goes so fast, and then it's like, oh, I want to continue on this topic. But I have my closing questions that I always ask, and
Okay.
then if there's any last thoughts around 80s nostalgia, I'll take it, because who doesn't? I mean, it's what I love about Stranger Things. You know, I look at Winona Ryder and I'm like, yeah, you know,
Yeah, I
all
remember.
of
Yeah.
that Beetlejuice, and I just, you
Yeah.
know, that's my era. Oh my God, like I'm not
Of
that old,
course,
you
of
know. But I'm
course.
just, I think it's we do say that, right? Like, oh, I'm
Yeah.
stepping into a more unsatisfactory life, which I did. I mean, I don't feel that's true for me, because I think, you know, I've part of what I do in my life, and staying true to being, I'm going to say, more the poet, more the artistic, staying in that nature where there is a lot more satisfaction within the soul, but seeing it around is pretty incredible to witness. So, all right,
Yeah.
because you are a philosophical, more logical being creature, I'm going to ask you, and I'm going to try to do this as fast as I can. I've been told
Okay.
5 minutes, people, 5 minutes.
Yeah. Tick, tick, tick,
Okay,
tick.
what's one truth your body has always known that your mind took years to catch up to?
Oh gosh. Take care of me. My mind was not really focused on taking care of the body at certain points in my life. I've never been terrible, but like C plus. And now I'm in a kind of A minus frame of mind where better take care of this thing because it's protesting all the terrible things you did to it earlier, like overworking the body and stuff like that. So yeah, the mind is catching up with the body, and it's like, oh, okay, I get it, I get it.
Thank
We'll
you.
go
I
we'll go
love
for
that.
A minus.
It's an
Yeah,
A minus now. It's good.
yeah,
Went from a
from
C
from
plus.
C
Good.
plus to A minus. Yeah.
2, what is the most intimate moment you've ever had that had nothing to do with sex?
Oh wow. I guess in mindfulness practice, having sort of brain this is ties really close to sex. It was like a braingasm. I was meditating and just had a complete bliss out. And I was like, I didn't even ask for it, and I wasn't even good at meditating. I just stumbled into this thing, and I was like, fudge, this is so amazing, right? I was like, wow. And I chased that dragon for years, and it little close to it, but I have deep reverence for that moment of my life. And I've had other moments in mindfulness where I drop out and I'm completely like done with this person. It was just more that I was being and not being me, and that's so peaceful to get away from that for a while. So anyway,
Thank you. That's
yeah.
amazing. And I hope other people heard that, because yes, there's such thing as a braingasm. 3, if you
Yes.
could be remembered for one sensation you gave someone, what would it be?
Oh gosh. Uh Healthy pride, but not egoic pride. Like just, wow, I have value. If I could pass that on, it's not. I don't know if I could make physical contact to do that, but it would be an intimate exchange with someone. Again, non-sexual intimate exchange where you're like, no, no, you have something so wonderful, like a superpower that you're not quite salient to you yet. But if I could pass that to somebody, yeah, that would be what I would want.
Beautiful. 4, if pleasure were a language, what would your first word be?
Uh, oh, I'd be selfish and say release. Yeah,
Beautiful.
yeah.
If your erotic life had a title like a novel or a film, what would it be called?
Being the clown. Don't take me
Beautiful.
too seriously, right? No, the title would be like,
Amazing.
don't take me too seriously. Hey, there's a lot of fun in sex though, right? It can be
Totally.
comedic too, right?
Absolutely.
All
Don't
that
take
fun
me too
frenzy. Yeah,
seriously.
don't take this too seriously. Yeah.
Oh,
So anyway.
what's one thing you've never said out loud, but you wish someone would ask you about?
Oh my gosh. Oh, what's my untapped potential that I'm not aware of, I guess, am I missing something? Do you see something that I'm missing?
That's a great question. Thank you. And
Yeah.
what part of what's one thing you've never said out loud, but you wish someone you would ask? Sorry, I just asked that. What part of your erotic self are you still afraid to bring into the light?
Oh gosh. I don't know. I think this could be self-deception and delusional, but I think I express myself in a complete or a holistic way in that sense. I don't think there's a longing for something that has never been fulfilled. I don't know.
Okay.
I'd have to meditate on that one.
All right. So we have three more. I'm going to try to do it really
Okay.
fast. What
Okay.
dies in you? What dies in you when you pretend, and what comes alive in you when you don't?
My sense of authenticity, the insincere authenticity dies when I'm being inauthentic consciously. So there's
Mhm.
unconscious and conscious. And what was the second part?
And what comes alive when you don't pretend?
Oh, yeah, just the sense of having that ownership of being sincerely inauthentic, but doing the best I can. Yeah.
Amazing. Finish the sentence. When I leave this life, I want my skin to remember.
Hmm. When I leave this life, I want my skin to remember. Is that so I'm missing the nuance in that. I want,
When I leave this life, when I get to the pearly gates, I want my skin, my flesh, my sense to remember.
oh, just that I did my best to be a good human being.
Beautiful.
You did your best, lad. Yeah.
Okay. And one last question, because I know we're going to get kicked off. If the
Okay.
soul has a scent, what does yours smell like today?
Oh my gosh. A nice apple. I
Ooh,
love the
and
smell of good
how about
apples.
candy apple since it's
Yeah.
Halloween?
Yeah. Yes.
And
Perfect.
candy
Perfect.
apple today, I think. I don't know why I'm saying
Yes.
that, but okay. All right. Thank
Perfect.
you, Justin. I know we're going to get
Of
shut down.
course.
So thank you, Justin McSweeny, for joining me today.
Of
You
course.
have your own podcast, Idea Cast, and please tell people if they want to be able to research you. What is your website? Go.
Illuminlife.org. They can go there or IdeaCast on YouTube. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today. Hope you get lots of yummy candy, playfulness, and find a mask and something fun to wear. Thank you for joining me. If you want to know more about what I do, I'm a body, sex, and soul coach, and you can explore my website at gwenmcarsley.com. Good night. Good day. Bye. Thank you for listening to Skin and Soul with me, Gwenm. Join me Fridays at 10 a.m. PST on Transformation Talk Radio. Catch the podcast anytime on your favorite platforms. You can follow me on Instagram at Luvology. Ready to take the next step? Book a compatibility call with me at gwenmcarsley.com.